G'day, legends. Welcome to the Pot Noodle on Celtic Down Under. I'm your host, Jared, and joining me tonight is Shane. How you going, Shane?
Hey, good. Thanks, Jared. Good to be back with you after a few busy weeks. Last time I was on, I actually forgot to actually plug my microphone in. So whatever happens tonight, I think I'm going to be doing better than my last appearance.
There we go. Learning experiences and all that. I think that's the key thing we'll talk about tonight on the pod. So yeah, going to be a bit of an interesting one tonight. The main topics we want to talk about are the fan protests with the collective, fan collective, against the board. We'll talk about that. We'll go into some depth on it. Shane doesn't know too much on it, so we'll get a nice reaction on that. So let us know in the comments as well. Smell the gloves jumping straight in on it as well. G'day, Troopers, sack the board. So he's onto it straight away. Got the Hibs game. Yeah, I had a bit of an interesting one. Got about 5-6 minutes in the game, and my stream just cut out, and never came back. So I've only seen the highlights. So Shane, we're going to need you and your all the waffling that you have about the game here. So what we'll do is we'll just start off starting lineup as usual. Once this thing decides to wake up. So Casper in goals, the big Ralston back in the Bricky, then Carter Vickers, Scales and Srirachi. Middle of the park, McGregor, Engels, Luke McCowan, and then up front, Iheanacho with Dazen on the right, Tenecti on the left. So me looking at that pre-game, I was like, I only had one concern, right? And I'm like, we're going into a Europa League game against Braga during the week. We played so much football already. If there was ever a game that we were going to rest Calmac, it's this one. And we didn't. So I think that means he's undroppable in Brendan's eyes, and we could just get used to it. So I said on Thursday that I wanted Engels, Bernardo, and McCowan to start. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad, I suppose. But yeah, the other thing was Mader up on the right. Bit different, but he hasn't done that since under Ange when he first got to the club. But yeah, I had no problem with that either. But Shane, what was your thoughts on the lineup? And then just get into the first half, basically. No goals to
Well,
talk about, so we can just wax on and get it over and done with.
well, I concur with your comment regarding Calmac, and I think a lot of people felt exactly the same way. This was the opportunity to give him a rest. This was the chance to go with McCowan, Bernardo, and Engels in midfield, and I was a little bit surprised as well. Or maybe I shouldn't have been surprised that he was included, but this seemed like that perfect opportunity. There were obviously quite a few changes to the team that played midweek. So we obviously had Srirachi come in for Tierney, and then obviously the midfield we've talked about, but then up front, the big change with Maeda shifting out to the right, Iheanacho through the middle, and then Konecki obviously keeping his spot. I didn't really know what to make of Maeda on the right. I was a little bit perplexed by it, but it's that whole right wing situation is just a real conundrum at the moment. So Brendan's really trying to find. It's almost like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Really, he's trying to find that balance that's going to work. And unfortunately, on the basis of what we saw, I don't think Maeda on the right is the answer either. But in terms of the first half, I'm going to take a little bit of a glass half full approach to this a little bit. I thought the way we played was actually quite good. I thought we had really good control of the game. I thought there was a tempo to our play, which was really pleasing. It didn't really feel like the usual horseshoe of death, which we've talked about a fair few times on this pod. I thought the passing was pretty good. I thought the link-up play at times, particularly on the left between Konecki and Srirachi, was really good. There was actually a lot to like, in all honesty, about the first half. And you can literally copy and paste this for the second half, in all honesty, as well. But the one thing that was missing, which was really galling, is the fact that of the great opportunities and the gilt-edged chances we created, we didn't take any of them. And that was a theme that was across both halves.
On that same, if I can just jump in quickly. Like I was looking at the stats before that I was going to bring them up, but when you go through and you look at like shots, we had 26, 6 on target, but then they say like, was it key chances? We had 7 and missed all 7. So
Absolutely.
it ties in exactly to what you're saying.
And it was very noticeable and very early on, we were getting the ball into good areas. There were a couple of chances where Ian Archer was probably just a little bit slow to react at the back post. Engels, I really liked the midfield three actually in the first half, particularly the inclusions of McCown and Engels. I like what McCown brings. He's constantly probing when he gets on the ball. He's always looking forward to make something happen. Engels is that quality player though, and he was whipping in a lot of good deliveries into the box. His set piece works great, but just his ability to cross the ball in as well from midfield as well and put it across, really pleasing. Again, we were actually asking all the right questions. We just weren't taking the chances, and arguably they probably had the most gilt-edged chance just on half time. They probably, in all honesty, could have gone in 1-0 up. We'd been very wasteful, and then they put over a chance. Well, they missed one, which they really should have buried. So it was very frustrating to go in 0 at half time. We'd done enough to take at least a 2-goal lead into the break, and really disappointing we didn't take any of those chances.
For me, Shane, like I'm really liking, as you said, the link up between Tenecti and Srirachi. Like they look like they've been playing together for a long time. So having seen the highlights and based on it off what I've heard from other people and group chats I'm in and stuff like that, those two look like they're linking up well. Maeda on the right, I actually, yeah, it's not ideal. His best position is it striker, is it left wing? Well, his third best position is right wing. Let's be honest, because it's where he plays across the front. Scary thing is, him playing in his third best position is actually the best option we have for that position. It's better than Yang. Jamesy can't do it for a whole game. So, worst case scenario, Maeda is actually your best option on the right wing. That's ridiculous. So, yeah, I just think it's a bit of a strange one. But the other thing I did like was we're talking on Thursday about changing to a 4-2-3-1 and putting someone inside next to Calmac to do his running for him, the way Calmac did the running for Bruni in Brendan's first stint. Now, Engels being on the field with McGregor, actually, from what I've seen and heard, McGregor actually seemed to not be passing the ball backwards as much as usual. Still did it a bit, but not at the same levels. So if you've got someone else in the middle of the park there, you're yeah, maybe that's something we're going to look at long term. But I don't know if McGregor doesn't drop out at all ever. What's that mean for Bernardo? Who knows?
Well, I mean, we can chat about him in the second half because he obviously came on and had a little bit of a cameo. But look, I agree with you, I definitely noticed us not looking to pass the ball back as much. It felt like there was a little bit of a fire lit under them after the performance midweek, and not so much getting that draw was necessarily a poor result, but the performance itself, particularly in the first half midweek, wasn't what we wanted it to be at. So it felt like there was an emphasis there to make sure we were constantly on the front foot. It's somewhat more similar to an Ange team in terms of that relentlessness. It wasn't at the same level, but there were definitely more parallels than what we've seen previously from Brendan.
We just need that little video clip thing of Brendan on the sideline. We're past the 5-minute mark, so I've got to uncheck that. But it's like, pass it fucking forward, like Ange did. Like that. We just need a moment like that for us all to rally behind, and then we can go, okay, it's not Brendan, it's the players.
Yep.
That's what we just need, that moment. And we know Brendan likes to play up to the gallery, so I expect to get that sort of video clip from him in the next 2 or 3 games. And then that gets pushed to the side and he's controlling a narrative again. Good fun. But yeah, realistically, like apparently Iheanacho, yeah, he should have potentially had a hat trick. Yeah, overall just wasteful. But yeah, the overall play is that, and the talking to people, I know the gist is that was probably our best performance of the season in terms of the type of football we played. Yet we dropped points, so a bit disappointing, but it is what it is, I suppose. But we knew it was going to be a tough game anyway because Hibs are well organised. Celtic had just come back from a game away in Europe, so it's always a tough match whenever we have that as well, even though it was at home. So putting everything together, dropping points wasn't unexpected, but yeah, it is what it is, I suppose. Who'd be your
We've
man
seen
of that, Shane?
Well, I was going to say, we've seen worse performances where we've dropped points at home, either being held to a goalless draw where we've scored we've still been held to a draw. There's been a lot worse performances than this. Just the way they played, maybe deserve. I went on the weekend that we deserved to win this game, and to be honest with you, after thinking that through and with a bit of chatter with other people, you can't really deserve to win a game where you're so wasteful. So I'll retract that a little bit. We did enough to absolutely win this game, and we should have won 3 or 4-0 because of the way that and the football that we played. But you can't ignore the wastefulness. And as I said before, we don't really need to go into the second half that much because you can literally just copy paste everything I said from before and put it to the second half.
Control C, Control V. There you go.
That's right. The only comment I would add, I'm happy to get into individual players later. The only comment I would add is I felt like a little bit of the energy we had did drop away with the substitutions we made. And that ties in more to the discussion about the depth and maybe who we're bringing off the bench to try and be the game changers. It did feel like we didn't exactly stop, but it did feel like that same energy and momentum that was where there did kind of take a bit of a divot. In terms of man of the match, look, I really liked Sirachi's game. I thought he was really good. I thought he was getting up and down the left. He was providing an option out wide. He was linking up well with Tanetki. Tanetki was still good. Tanetki, was still good, but I thought he was a little bit curtailed compared to what we've seen previously, where Sirachi was really trying to make up for it. And I'm looking forward to seeing those two continue, hopefully linking up down the left for a little bit longer. But yeah, I'd probably lean on Sirachi. I thought our back four in general were pretty good, but Sirachi for me stood out.
It's going to sound weird because I actually had him in my top 3, but yeah, something I wanted to bring up beforehand was when you're talking about the depth, the fact that we're bringing Johnny Kenny on when we're trying to chase a goal to win the game says it all about the whole recruitment failures over the off-season. So, like Johnny Kenny, think he's okay, but he's a third-string striker for us. He shouldn't be the guy coming in to try and do that. But I liked what I've seen of highlights and everything is Jamesy. I thought he did decent. I thought he has not disappointed me once when he's hit the pitch this season. I just want him to get this goal earlier this year so he can keep his run going. But yeah, Sirachi's up there too. Now, there was I just wanted to ask you one other thing about the game, but I've just had a mental blank. Oh, I was looking at the stats. That's right. So when you're looking at your stats, bloody 20 pass accuracy, 91% to 68%, but the stat that jumps off the page at me, 16 fouls to 1 for the game. How the hell does Hibs have 1 foul in a whole 90-plus minutes of football with how physical they play compared to us? That's one that when I looked at the stats after the game, I'm like, how?
I hadn't noticed that until you pointed it out. I felt we were getting the rough end of the stick in terms of the whistle, that's for sure. I thought Don was blowing up for a lot of fouls in their favour, which were very, very 50-50 Tiki Touchwood. He was very quick to penalise Carter Vickers on a few things, which, again, in hindsight, I'd look at and go, well, this seems like he's clearly won the ball. I don't see what the problem is here. So yeah, I felt like we weren't getting the rub of the green, so to speak. But to know that they only had 1 foul against them for the whole 90 minutes, that's staggering. Yeah, I can't believe that.
Yeah, it's just not possible. Like, you could fall over, like trip over your own feet, knock a player, and there's a foul there. Like, we've seen it before. So, like, even when you watch team warm up, in warm up they're fouling each other more. So, or at corners, the amount of times goalkeepers get bumped off their line or whatever, or players get held. How can they only have 1? That just doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, as soon as you said Don, I'm like, yeah, that says it all.
I didn't notice it so much in the first half. Definitely second half, he seemed to be blowing up for a lot more in their favour, which was just becoming irritating by the end of the game. It felt like every kind of minimal contact was a foul, trying to get them a bit of relief. But probably need credit to Hibs in some regards. I know we don't like the way teams sit deep sometimes, and we call it a little bit anti-football, but you've got to sort of respect the ability for them to keep that shape, particularly with the way that we were playing and probing. They had to stay compact, they had to stay tight together, and they did. Shout out to catcher in the rye, or maybe more catcher in the wet, JD Salinger in goal. He did quite well. He made a couple of crucial saves, in all honesty. Decent keeper there. So, yeah, look, credit to them.
The thing is, Shane, there's a comment here. I was going to get to it, but I'm going to jump straight on it now. Is just trying to find it here from McLaughlin. Look at Rogers' second season the first time around. Basically, we're seeing the same thing again. Like, first time around, we were invincible treble winners. Then once we lost that first game, teams knew how to set up against us. Second half of last season after Bayern, teams knew how to set up against us domestically and make it awkward, awful, and terrible football. And it's more of the same this season. Just like in his third season, first stint around, same deal, same deal. So, yeah.
The only thing I will take, just to, again, to continue the glass half full theme a little bit, if you recall that second season, I remember we drew with Rangers at Parkhead, and the league was pretty close at that point from memory, and there was a little bit of concern. And from there, we were able to steady the ship. And we also did that in the third season as well. But there was a key factor. There was a change in that third season, which obviously Lenny implemented really, which was obviously the change in formation. But that second season, Brendan did get it right, and we were able to power away. So if we're looking back to look forward, we can look at that with a little bit of positive hopefulness.
Yeah, and then it's McLaughlin saying, look at the 17-18 league table. That's what's in store. So I'll go back to some comments I wanted to bring up about this. So McLaughlin said, we scored 9 goals in 9 games this season, out with the 2 League Cup games. Robert Gibson said that the Coke King of Livy is doing Hunnish like favours again. McLaughlin's fired up with 4-0 all draws and a 1-all draw. And then Smell the Glovers, we've regressed so much. When Ange was there, the subs off the bench either kept up the tempo or increased it. Now the depth due to recruitment doesn't do that. And then it's been followed up with, this isn't a come down from Ange ball anymore. It's a complete aneurysm.
I did see how that tied in.
And then Robert Gibson, I still think we are suffering from a serious bout of shite just now. Smell the Glove says, the league is my total priority now. The Thursday Cup is just getting in the way. If that's the case, just give Sinisalo games in each of them and just split it that way, but we'll figure it out. Pork Chop Express, players knew they had to play forward for the most part under Ange. Now we have to take the safe option instead of the brave one. And that's what I'm worried about, being coached into players like Tenecti. Nigrin, when he first came in, he was looking forward in the preseason, looking to take players on. Now he's not doing that so much. I hope that doesn't happen. Shane, you mentioned earlier about Tenecti, not being as impactful as he was. I hope that doesn't happen to him. We haven't really even seen Balikwisha get out of first gear yet. Is that something that's being coached into the guys? I hope not.
I want to touch on that real quickly because it was something I was going to bring up. And I don't want to go too hard on a chap who's just started his career in the hoops, but I've got some real concerns about Balikwisha and what I've seen so far. And I take on your point about the fact that maybe it's being coached out of him, but there was a real opportunity in this game for him to stamp his authority on this a little bit, right? We needed a goal. We were still pressing. We still had momentum despite what I'd mentioned earlier about the subs. He comes on in the 74th minute. This is his opportunity on the left to make a difference. And every time he got the ball, I wouldn't say he was looking to pass back, but he just didn't have the energy or the intensity I'd be wanting for my substitute winger to have. Complete contrast to Jamesy, who gets on the ball and he's like, let's go, let's make something happen. And I've just seen, Brendan mentioned that he was sort of waiting for him to get up to speed a little bit. It's been a couple of weeks now. I'm just not sure I'm seeing anything there yet. I hope I'm wrong. I want him to come out and prove me wrong, but considering where the game was at on the weekend, I thought this is your opportunity, and he didn't take it.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at some comments here as well. So Johnny's saying Mater on the right didn't work. All he did was drift in the middle, left angles under L chops to do all the work. I love a good Rel chops mention. That's why I had to bring it up, Johnny.
I actually really agree with that. I know you said that as the third option, he's probably the best right winger we have, and I don't necessarily disagree with that statement, but I didn't like the game from Mater at all on the weekend.
I'm not necessarily saying the way he played. I'm just saying in terms of ability, he's probably the best we've got.
Oh, no question. Absolutely no question about that.
I'm thinking at the moment, what's going to happen is Jota comes back and he's going to have to play on the right the rest of the season because with that loaded up on the left, we've got 4 left wingers. Jota's going to have to switch over and play on the right once he's fit. It's the only option we've got for that position that'll actually make it be an improvement.
Yep.
Johnny's saying would have liked to see Forrest, Iheanacho and Tenecti on for 15 minutes. Now, there's a comment here, the smell of the glove, was Lawwell at the ground on Saturday? I don't think he was, from what I've heard, and this is a big alleged. So this is allegedly. Apparently, he's pretty crook and will be lucky to still be involved in the club by the end of the season, from what I've heard. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that and wait for an announcement to come out at the stock exchange. Obviously, if he steps down, but yeah, see what happens. Pork Chop Express is saying Flair's being replaced by in favour of safety first approach. Don't take the risk if there's a safer option. Always take the risk, in my opinion. There you go. And Lubo McNamura is saying could see Jota and Tenecti swapping in games like him and Abadi used to do. Oh no, not the old Lenny switch the wingers tactic after 15 minutes. But no, it's interesting one. So if that's the case, Shane, I think we'll leave the game there and we'll get into this board thing and chat about that. So I'm just going to find the things I wanted to bring up onto the screen. So bear with me a second. So there was the letter that was put out by the fan media, which is now the Celtic fan, not just fan media, but supporter groups, CSCs, the works across which is now being headed up by the Celtic fan collective, right? So these are the 7 points that we're still waiting after so many days for any sort of response on. So the first thing is, what is the club's long-term football strategy and when and how will this be communicated to supporters? Why has there been no investment in critical positions despite repeated pleas from the manager, obvious weaknesses in the squad and calls from supporters? What accountability measures are in place for repeated failures in transfer dealings? How do you intend to modernise the club's structure to compete in Europe and why are we consistently unprepared for qualification stages? When will the supporters receive the results of the fan survey conducted over a year ago and why have these not yet been released despite the club being in possession for several months? What have the results of the Fairhurst inquiry not been made public and what action will the club take to protect supporters from unlawful and disproportionate policing in the future? That has been addressed. That's the only one of these 6 that came out these 7. That one came out on the weekend. And the last question was, why does the club continue to resist working with supporters and to improve matchday atmosphere, supporter experience, and consultation on key issues such as ticket pricing and distribution? So, off the back of that, Shane, we end up with things like this happening at games. We had the walk-in 12 minutes into the game at Killy. I'm a fan of walk-ins, not walk-outs, if we're going to do anything, and that's what I've signed on behalf of Celtic Down Under for this to say, yep, we're behind this movement. And then you've got these where the big TIFO and all these banners, right? Now, I understand that is an expense, that the collective would do that sort of thing on game day when the TV's on because it's something that obviously you can't turn away from, right? But the latest one for me, actually, before we get into that, what's your thoughts on this so far?
Well, I've been a little bit on the periphery. I'm obviously across the frustration and the reasons this has come about. I'm not in the full nitty gritty like yourself and a few others are, so I won't be able to provide super insight into it. But if I can answer it on face value at the very least from someone who's a little bit on the peripheral, those questions are all very valid, very reasonable questions that deserve answers. They are leaning into the frustrations we all have. This has all come to a head. This is something that's been bubbling away for many, many years now, and it's all come to a head this season, and there's been very little traction or feedback since then. And unfortunately, when you've got a situation where it just continually bubbles, eventually people are going to have enough and it's going to explode. We're at that point now. And those questions are more than reasonable and deserve detailed and thorough answers.
Now, the thing, Shane, that I'm looking at is it's not a like for me, everyone's going to have their own opinion on this, right? And I 100% back anyone to say, if you don't agree with any of these protests or signs or anything like that, you're 100% entitled to have your opinion and your view, okay? I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. And if you tell me I'm wrong, I'll tell you to shove it. So that we're all entitled to our opinions, right? I'm not preaching. I'm not telling anyone that they have to be on side with this, okay? 100% need to know that. I'm just putting this info out there because I think it's a big topic for the club at the moment. And being over the other side of the world in Australia, we're on the outside looking in. So we can take the emotion that if you're living in it, like a lot of the people in the comments are, and people on the other pods and fan media and that I'm in this group chat with, you're all over there. You're in amongst it. You're in the weeds of this. I'm over here. It's not going to matter to me. What's the club's not going to ban me from any press conferences. I can't get to them anyway. So there's no issue for me. So I'll look at it and go, I can just say this and come in 2-footed if I want on a few things. And I don't really care because I have that luxury of, being outside of that. So that's why we're coming in on this and talking about it the way we are. So the key things for me is there's quotes, people saying, back the board, back the team, sack the board. Unfortunately, you can't sack the board because majority of them are shareholders. So someone has to buy them out. And that's the part that sucks to me. So what we need to do is find another way for them to realize that we're not the enemy. We're not customers. They're the custodians of the club at the moment, but this club will continue. This club was around before I was even a twinkle in my dad's eye, when my grandfather was a wee boy following this club, right? So this has carried on and has been going on like the love from my family for decades and generations. Same with the majority of the people tuning in and listening, people going to games. It's an institution, it's part of your life. Okay. So it's not a the way I look at it is this isn't coming, we're not doing this because we just want to cause chaos or we want to, be disruptors or we want to just stir the pot. No, no, no. This is all coming from a place of love. Every single person who watches games, Shane and me over here in Australia, we're watching games at like a midnight kickoff. So Willie in New Zealand, 2 a.m. on the weekend, right? Liam in Japan, 11 p.m. kickoff. You've got all this sort of, we're all watching the game in the middle of the night when we should be sleeping. Right? We love the club. You've got you guys over there, you're watching it, you love the club. It doesn't mean that the love and respect and the way you follow the club is any more important than us or vice versa. We all put our money into the club in different ways. We all support this club and we all want to see what is best for Celtic as a football club overall. That's it at the end of the day. So that's the way I look at it. So before I keep ranting, Shane, do you want to jump in?
Mate, I don't really want to jump in because I think the way you've summed it up, and particularly the passion you've spoken about through this connection with your family, which dates back so long with this club, I don't really want to say anything over the top of that, to be honest, mate, because I think that summed it up perfectly. And I'm really on the periphery by comparison. And yeah, I appreciate, obviously, I've got an opinion on things as well, but I definitely defer to people like yourselves who are more into it, more on top of this, and particularly those who might follow the club locally, who see this and are privy to this on a day-to-day basis. Sure, I've got my frustrations, but I think you touched on it really perfectly, and just the connection that people have and why this means so much, because this club does mean so much for so many people, as it has done for generations and will continue to do for generations. And we want to see the best for this club as a collective.
Yeah, 100%. So while we're all wanting what's best for the club, Shane, and getting onto it, like there's the current thing that they did on the weekend. But before we get into that, I just want to go through a few of my little notes that I've written down. Yes, I actually wrote stuff down like old school here with a notepad and pen. Thoughts on, you've got those seven questions for the club, but then I've got extra things that if I was able to get in front of the club and ask questions, I said this on the little short video I did a couple of weeks back, things that I would ask, but I've got further things that I've thought of since then, right? So I'm looking at it. One of the things that I would ask the club is if I had the chance to front the board, the degradation of the stadium. They still haven't put up, they still haven't put up the new, the things around the outside of the stadium. Where it used to be Celtic Park, well, this is Paradise. There's patches that still don't have that. They've been down for 6 months now. There's parts of the stadium you can openly see rust when you look at photos of it. There's parts that need coat of paint, fix up, whatever. But there's a whole heap of stuff like the stadium just looks old. And I've got a mate who went over there and he was like, "Oh, I went for a tour of Celtic Park." And what he said to me was, other than after 5 minutes of being at the club, and Shane, you did the tour recently, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
So you can jump off the back of this for me and tell me if I'm wrong. But after the first 5-10 minutes of being at Celtic Park and going, "Oh, I'm in the change room. This is where, guys that I've watched for the last decade, this is where Tom Rogic played for 10 years as an Australian." That's one I'll bring up, right? But stuff like that, this is an important club. Then you go out and you see the tunnel and you see the field and you look around and you see the Lisbon Lions stand and all this sort of stuff, right? And after about 5 or so minutes, what he'd said to me was, he's like, "Okay, that's great. I'm at Paradise. Perfect. This is how good. Get some photos done, whatever." And then he just looks around the stadium more and more. And he's just like, this stadium, they wouldn't even play A-League games at some of, like, some parts of it. Some of the stadiums they use at A-League over here are better.
I'll put
Parts
my
that have
hand up.
fallen apart.
I personally didn't notice it as much. I was just so incredibly in awe at being there. And this isn't trying to sound like a board apologist or a situation apologist or anything like that. I'd never set foot in Paradise before. I'd only ever seen it on TV. No matter what happened that day, unless something actually collapsed in front of me, I was just going to remain in awe of where I was and so forth. So I had most certainly the green and white tinted specs on that day. I didn't notice that situation as much. And I can't provide you much more insight into that, I'm afraid, other than just I really loved being there.
Fair enough, because I talk to people who go to game season ticket holders and they say, like, the food stalls are rubbish. You can't get, like, the lines for the toilets are terrible. There's all that sort of basic work as well. So when you put a whole bunch of things together, the stadium needs work. Okay, so I'll just look at it on that front. Now, the next thing is we've spoken about the youth development. This is where the next thing I'd say, if I had a chance in front of them, the youth, how many players have broken through from our youth academy and how many of them have missed their chance because we weren't willing to give them a game? Case in point, look at Colby Donovan at the moment. How well has he been playing this season? Would he have got a chance if AJ and the Bricky weren't injured? No. So that makes you think there are talented players there who could do a job for us, but our youth development setup is absolutely rubbish. And to me, it looks like a lot of jobs for the boys. I want the best possible coaches we can get, development staff we can get. And if they've happened to play for Celtic, that's a bonus, but we need to have the best of the best. Because in Scotland, the issue we have is we don't have deep pockets from the TV deal. So we need to be making sure for Europe, when you have to have 8 homegrown players, we didn't even have that this year. So we only got a 24-man squad for Europe instead of a 25-man squad because we had to give up a position. So that has to be a priority.
I guess just to touch on that, there is a little bit of, and this is just a bit of devil's advocate here, of course, is that obviously this also ties into, as you said, Scotland in general. And you talked about on the previous pods about not having a reserve league or reserve competition as well. And then obviously the B team playing in a competition that probably isn't challenging them to the level we need to either bring them into the first team, make them first team ready, or even see the best of them to know, hey, we've got a player here, right? It's all about intuition a little bit. But as you've mentioned, and a few others have mentioned on previous pods, do we look at trying to actually make a difference for Scotland overall to benefit ourselves in terms of helping with setting up a reserve league or so forth? So just as a way of discussion, I think some of that is also around just as you said, the situation we're in, as opposed to necessarily the club purely and squarely with that in control.
I think that we're just from the club situation, we're not developing enough players of the standard that if you're looking at it going, do we have to go and sign someone like a Luke McCowan, or should we have someone coming through from the academy for that fifth or sixth man in the midfield?
Well, we did when you like a little while ago. I can't
Young
think of his first
Kelly
name.
is now at
That's
Millwall.
right. I was about to say I couldn't think of his first name, but you know, case in point. And then obviously that didn't eventuate. He didn't. We were calling on this pod for him to get minutes when the opportunity arose. That didn't really fashion itself. So naturally, as a footballer, you want to challenge yourself. You want to play. You think you're ready. You're going to go somewhere else to play. The club can only hold on to players and spin that whole you're the amazing Celtic Football Club to a certain length before they go, yeah, but I'm not playing. I need to play. I'm a footballer, and then they'll eventually move on.
So the next 2 points I'll put together, right? So we've spoken about the summer. Scouting and recruitment was piss poor this off season. It was the same in Brendan's first summer at the club. But for me, when you look at the recruitment being poor, right? But then you look at the financials where we spent £10 million in corporation tax because of how much money we got sitting in the bank. 10 million. Well, what did we pay for Jota and Carter Vickers? 6 million a pop. So the money you spend on Tilio and the corporation tax is two first team level players like that. It's ridiculous. So if we're going to be paying that much corporation tax, why can't we be using that money, spending it so we don't have to pay as much tax and improving our stadium, bringing in more better players, fixing up the ticket box where out the front where your match day tickets. I've heard that's absolutely disgusting. Building a club museum, improving the Celtic way, and all that sort of stuff. Like if you watch the Birmingham TV show, the one that's on. I can't remember what it's on at the moment. I think it's on Amazon or something like that, right? But you look at guys like, I don't know which owner it was, if it was Tom Brady, and I can't remember, but I'm just going off memory. You see them when they first come into the club and they're walking around and they're going, we need to fix that, we need to fix that, we need to fix that, that's rusted, that's broken. And they walk around straight away with the stadium manager. Do we have a stadium manager? Do we have deep pockets? Justify your wage, get shit sorted. But then off the back of that, the last thing is the non-executive directors at the club have been there for way too long, like CEOs and chief operations officers and chief financial officers at most corporations only last 3 to 5 years because you need to constantly be churning over, bringing in new ideas, new people to modernize and go again. Look at the dinosaurs we've got in the boardroom at the moment. I reckon half of them smell like Old Spice. Let's be honest, and dust. They've been sitting there for that long. Like, it's ridiculous. So what's the plan to modernise not just the board, but the club? We need some fresh ideas in there. We can't have another Don Mackay situation where we get someone, get excited about him coming in, and then see you later because, he's upsetting the apple cart too much. Things have to change.
I'm not one who, from a management or CEO perspective, necessarily subscribes that people should be moved on after a certain amount of time on a personal level. But I subscribe that people should never feel safe in kind of those senior roles, and that you should be constantly challenging yourself to get better and progress further. And if you're feeling safe in that role, if you feel like, well, nothing's going to happen, everything's comfortable, I'm comfortable in this role, that's a problem. You should always be going, I need to keep striving to do better so that someone doesn't replace me or I get replaced or anything of that nature. And that's how I just look at leadership in general, whether it be a manager of a football club or higher up the chain. And I think if you have that emphasis of don't feel safe, never feel like you're safe or comfortable, make sure, I think that is not enough of a change, right? But it's the right kind of change that gets the wheels in motion of, I've got to do my best constantly all the time, every time, and not feel safe.
We have Liam on as our resident communist and you or Dan, those two, right? And they'll usually be agreeing with what Shane's just giving them all the talk they say, right? I'm going to look at it on a just devil's advocate here, right? Capital is a side of it, right? the board act like major capitalists. They want to make money. It's all about money for them. So that's why I'm looking at it from that perspective, right? So if you're wasting 10 million, so 10% of what you've got in the bank, right? Having to pay taxes every year, that's not a good. There's no like return on investment for that each year. You'd be better off having that 10 million in a term deposit at the Bank of Scotland, paying your percentages on that and making money on that than having it sitting in the bank just have to pay tax, right? You need to have your money, whether it's improving the stadium, building the hotel, which is going to make this. You've got to be doing stuff like that. So you got to view that side of it. You got to separate it into two things: football operations and book club, and the club. And the club they run like a business, but the football operations they don't let run like a football club. And that's where the issue is here. You've got non-football people trying to run football areas, and then you've got people who should be doing other things. There might be some good people on this board for, generating revenue and good sponsorship deals and so on and so forth. But are they doing that, or are they too caught up in other shit? So for me, like, I'm not saying you got to sack them all the time, Shane, but what I'm saying is, like, there does need to be a turnover. I see it in all the time. And when you're talking about leadership, I just want to jump on one last thing as well. You're saying they should be worried about, I have to be the best I can so I keep my job. I have a different leadership mindset. I want to train up when I've got people reporting into me at work. I want to train them up so they can replace me, because once they're ready to replace me, I can get promoted. So it's a completely different mindset. So if I was the CEO, I'd be wanting to train up someone underneath me to take my spot so I can become the chairman. And then when I'm the chairman, I'd want to be doing well enough to get enough to buy shares so I can be on the board and have someone else take the chairmanship from me, and then someone else take the CEO's role and move on. That's just how I'm wired. So, yeah, good fun.
You know what? We got through that entire discussion and all those points without even mentioning the plethora of kit and merchandise drops that happened throughout these years of frustration either.
I did mention that. I said the
Did
capitalist
you?
mindset of the board.
Oh, but I thought in a specific capacity, since it's something that has come up a fair bit.
All the fucking time.
Coming from someone who, I don't want to say I buy it, but it's quite clear I've bought some of that recently. So, not
You are
this
the problem,
season.
sir. No, it's good fun. So, yeah, what we'll do is we'll go through some comments here, and then we'll jump on to the last bit of the protest talk, and then we'll wrap the pod up there. So, yeah, so I'm just trying to find here. I smell the glove saying Willie Hoary probably after the chairmanship. I've heard that as well, and I actually don't think we could do a lot worse. Smell the glove is saying those 7 points will be in Nicholson's filing cabinet, otherwise called the waste bin. Smell the glove is massive breaking news. The main stand will be rebuilt by Ralston, the brickie with Kelmac doing the pointing. Nice. Robert Gibson saying border a bunch of daisy chaining Tories. Allegedly. Yeah, and we just scroll through a few more here. John saying, I'm starting to feel the only way we're going to see change is fighting the corporation. Too many of us are already arguing about what the right protest route is. And that's what we're going to talk about next, John, what the right protest route is, because I will openly say on this pod what I feel on it. I don't necessarily agree with the current pathway of what they're doing, but we'll get into that. And Pork Chop expresses, when the new dugouts were built, did Brendan realise his time was up when he noticed his booster seat with the initials SM in his place? And then I wonder what Maloney's going to do next year. Yeah. And heavy vibes, the Celtic Park tour shows you the investment needed. Smell the glove, loads of builders and painters, etc. in Glasgow, millions in the bank, at least get the ground tarted up and improved. Exactly. I love that term, tarted up. And in Pork Chop Express, club are going all out to piss the fans off when Brendan leaves. That's my fear. Cheapest chips manager to match their ambition. Yeah, so Robert Gibson. Hoopy will be the next manager. You know who my vote is? Not Hoopy. I want Weejay as manager. At least he gets up and about on the sideline. Yeah, good fun. Yeah, we're just having a look here. So I think McLaughlin's saying I think Celtic have more than repaid back the loyalty to Kennedy now. To be honest, I don't want to sound like a monster. It's time to move on. You're not sounding like a monster, McLaughlin, because I'm looking at that going. Kennedy should want to move on. He's not going to become the Celtic manager, so he should be looking to move elsewhere and get a gig and become the manager in his own right. Like if I was in his shoes, I'd be like, "Hey, Strachan, bring your laptop. Let's go take over a club like Dundee or something like that, and you know, build them up." That's what they should be doing. So yeah, smell the glove. John Kennedy needs to go and be a number one elsewhere for his own career before he becomes Celtic's Brian Kidd and always an assistant. Yeah, so it's going to be a bit of an interesting one there.
I want to touch on that real quick. I rate Kennedy. I really do. He's been tainted a little bit by obviously the length of time that he's been an assistant, across the many seasons now, but also a little bit tainted by the COVID season, unfairly in my opinion. I really rate him and the relationships that he builds with the players. I think he's a great sounding board for Brendan in particular. Ange liked him as well, don't get me wrong, but I think Brendan really appreciates him as a sounding board. But I think he's absolutely ready to take the next step. He has been for a little while, in my opinion. I'd love to see him take over a club, and I think he can do it. I think he's absolutely got what it takes. The only thing we don't know if he's got what it takes is the ability to actually step out of his comfort zone a little bit.
Well, let's look at it from this point of view, right? When Rogers left the first time, he tried to take Kennedy with him, and he didn't want to. When Ange left, he wanted to take him with him, and he said no. So then he went and got Chris Davies, right? So putting it together, he's shown that loyalty over and over. So now it's time to show some loyalty to himself and his career. And look, it's not going to happen for him at Celtic. He's got too much dirt attached to him, unfortunately. But I would love to see him go elsewhere and be successful. And then who knows what happens down the road. As long as it's not Lenny coming back for a third stint, it's okay. But Fraser McDonald has a comment. All the years of success under their lead and years of writing them off like that. Crazy. Fraser, all I'm going to say is I appreciate everything that the club has done under this board. But this board, pretty much as it is, has been in position for 20 years. And there's only one thing in life that is undefeated, and that's time. And when you've been doing the same thing for 20 years and you're paying the same wages to players now that you're paying under Martin O'Neill, and we're not improving, we're not modernising as the game has evolved, Father Time's undefeated. These people on the board, they may have been great business people when they're in their 50s and 60s. They still might be good business people, but there's other people out there in their spot who should be stepping in to take on that role and get fresh ideas. That's what I'm saying. I'm not writing off what we've done under them. Okay, I appreciate that. I'm just saying we need to move on. We need to modernise. You need new people to step up. Smell the glove. The board sit back and count the money brought in from the fans and occasionally get a new sponsorship deal, which it got due to fans' loyalty. Yeah, so Square Sausage Mick, maybe our next sponsor will be Heinz. And then John is, I happen to know from a first-hand source that the Huns are currently recruiting for a chief people's officer. Very modern approach to improving the company culture. No equivalent at Celtic. Yeah.
It's a wonder it's not Chief We Are the People's Officer.
Nice one. And then you've got Fraser saying, has anyone ever considered they may be keeping money back to invest in a new stadium in the near future while bringing domestic success? The stadium is an eyesore. And that's all we're asking, Fraser. Those questions.
Mm.
What's the money for? What's the plan? What's the plan to modernise the club? That's what we've been asking. And the board is silent. You don't hear anything. If they came out, like, let's be honest, if they come out and said, all right, we're stockpiling all this money because we want to suddenly we want to redo the main stand or expand the top of it as much as we can, bring it the stadium up to 70,000, modernize new parts, and do up around the Celtic way, while also winning domestic comps and doing well in Europe and bringing in 2 or 3 main players a year, being self-sustainable on that front. What would you be like with that, Shane, if you actually come out and said that?
Exactly. It'd be fine. I'd feel a lot better. Transparency is what is the key here, right? Being transparent about what the plan is, what the aim is going forward. Rough timeframes. People will be on board if they get some information, even if it's in its infancy, something that can be altered or needs to be altered down the track, right? But having that transparency alone is important, and people knowing what the plan is. What is the next steps forward? Don't give me specific times necessarily right now, but what is the aim here for our football club and all of these important things that make up our football club? That's really important.
As Square Sausage Mix saying here, board have already said that there'll be no new stand while we play in Scotland, which is bonkers. And then Fraser's saying they've got to invest in a new stadium. It's an embarrassment and falling apart. Fergus said it was made on the cheap for a limited time. Fergus also said that all they did was stage one, and there was a stage two that was supposed to happen like 3 or 4 years later, and that never happened. So the fact of the matter is, when was that stadium done? In the early 90s?
Hmm.
So it's 30 years old. It needs to be improved, whether you fix up the stand or you improve it. They're not going to knock down the whole stadium and rebuild it. They can't do that. Plus, there's an old train line or something underneath anyway, or whatever. So, or there's tunnels and stuff underneath. So, at the end of the day, we've got to just do something. But if the club come out and gave us a plan, this is what we're doing, this is what we're saving up for. I'd say 99% of the people who are currently signatories on that fan collective thing would be like, okay, cool. We can actually see a plan here. Let's get behind it. And the pressure gauge and the pressure valve on this board would release a bit. But they put their head in the sand and they don't say anything and they don't acknowledge us. It's just sit down, shut up. And that's what's frustrating. We just want to know what's going on. And it's that corporation tax. Here we go. And a Smell the Glove says the longer they sit on the money while paying the horrendous corporation tax, the cost of materials for the new stand goes up. Exactly. And if they're spending 10 million a year, for instance, on corporation tax, and you do that for 5 years, it's 50 million. That's half what was quoted to fix the main stand. So, yeah, there you go. It's ridiculous. And McLaughlin's saying, I worked in the stadium when we were seeing cracks in the concourse on the breeze block appearing in 1999. There you go. So, yeah, something has to be done. We just would love the club to come out and say what the hell is going on. Now, Smell the Glove. I hope you're not talking about me and Shane because we've gone all in. Well, I haven't.
I think I've played devil's advocate a little bit. I don't know if I'd call myself that necessarily, but I've definitely not gone as hard as yourself, mate. And that's just more being on the periphery. But I don't think I've apologised for them in any way. So I'll take umbrage if that's directed at me, sir.
All I'll say is if
Okay.
someone's saying I'm a board apologist, yeah, just do one.
No, he's clarified. It's okay.
I know. I was staring. So Fraser's saying nothing will change under a new board. The league will still be won. Trebles will be the norm and will be outgunned in Europe by teams who can spend 120 mil on one player. Money's ruined it. And Johnny's saying, wasn't there a rumour at the Celtic board refusing to revamp Celtic Park unless Celtic moved to the Premier League or a British league? Yeah, I heard that. If we were going to leave Scotland, I'd say let's go play in Germany. I would rather us go to that league than go down to the Premier League. At least that football over there still has some soul to it as well, other than Bayern. Yeah, so let's have a look through here. Yeah, so if we get back to the last couple of things from this talk that I wanted to do. So the current protest is the Celtic board continues to ignore the concerns of the Celtic support. We are launching a 3-match home package which reflects their silence. So against Hibs, it was 12 minutes representing the 12th man, so the fans. Against Braga, it's going to be 29 minutes. And then Against Motherwell will be 32 minutes. The silences are designed to reinforce the importance of Celtic fans to the football club by demonstrating how a silent stadium is in nobody's interest. We hope that the silent package may be called off at any point should reasonable progress be made by Celtic Football Club engaging with credible communication with supporters. Now, those dates, 29 minutes and 32 minutes, are based on the amount of days since the first 7 dot-point letter was sent out to the club. Okay.
Yep.
Now, the FAQ for the silent protest, so what's it about, and it just explains it. So, and what will it achieve? So, this is all up on the Fan Collective's social media channel, so I won't read too much in it. But the main things I'm seeing is in the comments where, what if I don't want to stay silent? I love this part, then don't. The Fan Collective represents a broad spectrum. Some will protest. What if Celtic score a goal? Then we celebrate. Silent protest doesn't mean we can't react naturally and emotionally to the match. It just means there'll be no singing. And then when you watch the game on the weekend, all you're seeing is a whole bunch of, once the crowd came in, you spotted it for a bit. What about back the team? And what will happen next? So after that, there'll be the international break and they'll go from there. So for me, Shane, with the whole silent protest, I mentioned it earlier, I'm not a massive fan of it. The board want us to go away and we're being quiet. So that's why I get it. I understand that we're just trying to make a point. And in the Europa League, 29 minutes, so almost a third of the game, our fan base being quiet, no singing, and then for the last hour, just going to sing the absolute roof down. That's great, but as we saw on the weekend, it just seems flat. And then the performance was great on the pitch, but it just seemed flat to me. So things like putting up all the faces, sack the board sort of stuff, the walk in after 12 minutes, 100% I'm behind that. Silent protests. If people want to sing and they're still allowed to, it's great. But my concerns are things like the main thing, as I said, the board want us to be quiet and go away and stop complaining, and now we're being quiet. So if we were to be quiet but then have a TIFO up and stuff like that and still have some sort of visual aid while this is happening, great. But if it's just sit there quietly and just cheer if goals are happening, no singing and that, for me, that's not what I don't really agree to that. But love to get your thoughts, Shane.
Yeah, I take a different view to it. I like it. My experience with it on the weekend was that it was very noticeable. And then the other thing I noted is that when we got past the 12th minute and when the Green Brigade started, that there was this general sort of roar or celebration from other fans not in that active area that appreciated them coming back on board. And it wasn't one of a like, thanks for rejoining us. It was more of an appreciation for the fact they took that silent protest. So that's how it came across to me. I quite like it. There's something really noticeable about having our support at Parkhead, a place that's normally raucous, and the Green Brigade do a great job of making matchday atmospheres, both in Europe and at in Scottish Premiership. Wonderful, wonderful atmosphere. There's something really noticeable about everyone being there, but nothing being heard. I get what you're saying. Like, they're trying to make us be silent and they're trying to make us go away. And I almost feel like it's a little bit of a double down of like, well, this is what it looks like when we are silent. This is what it looks like when we go away. Look how empty this feels. I actually think it's quite a really important way to protest. And I really love what you pointed out, which was the fact that this isn't we're going to shout you down if you try and cheer and support. If you don't want to back the protest and you want to be loud, that's on you. You can do that. I've been in other protests. I've been part of local protests here, right, as part of Melbourne Victory Football Club, and I can speak to this personally. We were going to do a walkout. Less said about that, the better. People remember the bucket situation.
The bucket.
I've been part of other situations where it's much more directive, and there really is I guess, a negative reaction if you don't want to stay silent. So I love this approach of, hey, look, this is how we're doing it, and probably the majority of us are going to do it. But if you don't want to, no worries, that's your opinion. People, they realize just how difficult it is to not support this team. It's difficult. It is genuinely, and I mean that. I'm trying to not to sound facetious when I say that. It's difficult to tell people who've loved and supported this club for many, many decades to stay silent. It's almost impossible because it's in everyone's DNA to do this. I would personally find it very difficult. That's just my nature. But I would most certainly take part in this because I think it's really important, and I think it does send a strong message, and it's going to send a really strong message against Braga because we know just how raucous Parkhead is on a European night. This will be very, very noticeable, and I think what you want in a protest is how noticeable is your protest. Well, sometimes being silenced the loudest thing you can do.
Hadn't thought of it like that, Shane. So that's why I like having these chats. Like I hadn't thought of it, like the visual of, well, this is how quiet it would be. Like this get if you want us to go, this is what it would be like. I got someone I know who sits up near the boys, and there was people that bay over from them trying to start having a sing along and everything, who were, during the silent, and there was words getting said and stuff like that. So there's going to be people with different opinions. But as the thing says, if you want to sing, sing. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Like, get involved. But I was bring up some comments here to finish it off here. So heavy vibes are saying silence is saying nothing. Gave the board hell. Fraser McDonald saying, I won't be staying silent and neither will 50% of the stadium. Back the team or you're the problem. Pork Chop Express is saying, I think the banner from the Green Brigade said it better than the actual silence did. Square Sausage Mick, I'm actively encouraging my wife to observe the silent protests. Joe, hail, mate. Shout out to the Celtic Down Under pod. First heard you when I was in Maui, Victoria. Been listening to you for a few years. Celtic community in Australia is superb. Top class, Joe. Appreciate it.
Shout out to Maui.
Oh, geez, good old Maui.
Good old Maui. Yep. Deserves a shout out on any pod, anywhere, at any time, Maui.
Oh, some of the best mullets I've ever seen. People from Maui wearing mockos and tracky pants. Got to say it properly. Tracky dacks, mockos, and mullets. Maui for you. Summer. Best thing here. Yeah, so yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. The way I smell the glove, dude. Have to bring this up. This is smell the glove, everyone, not me. 29 minutes of silence will be difficult on Thursday. Do they realize how many women attend games? That is, you're either a brave man or you're about to get castrated. One or the other.
If my partner's watching this and I get slapped later tonight, I'm blaming you for that, mate. Smell the glove. I don't deserve that.
As Dermot saying here, board will be happy with silence. Stop buying merch and Adidas will be asking questions quickly. Braga lost 1-0 last night. John saying Green Brigade and Boys Celtic weren't the only ones that did the silent protest. Most of the fans there didn't sing till the 12th. I'd say 60% participated. And Fraser says, you're not doing yourself favours here, bro. Honestly, the Green Brigade are just a bunch of drunk kids that are not allowed to think for themselves. Most of them have only ever known success and don't know how good they had it. Mate, I grew up watching us in the 90s. I've seen how bad things can be. And I side with the Green Brigade on this. The shit needs to change, man. So, yeah, I think we'll just leave it there. We'll call it a pod. But, Shane, you got a final thought to wrap up the pod?
Just music recommendation for me as per usual. So I'm sure many people who tune into the pod are familiar with the band Suede, who went away for a few years, came back about a decade ago now. They just released their latest album called Antidepressants, and it's a really, really good album. I wasn't really into Suede beforehand, but gave it a spin, and it's really, really enjoyable. So if you are into Suede, check it out. If you're not, I'd still check it out. It's a good album.
My final thought, I just want to give a shout out and pass on some condolences to Dan from this podcast. The guy is usually on here. bubbly personality. I just know for the last 24 hours, he's just been an absolute blubbering mess because his Penrith Panthers lost in the finals yesterday and they won't be in the grand final for the first time in 6 years. So suffering your jocks, your flogs. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hail, hail, and see you on Thursday.
How?